This morning while I was at the gym, I was listening to an E4 Electric episode where Alex was talking to Sandy Munro, who, as we all know, is like the automotive and actually just general engineering expert to end all experts. And in this talk, they focused on Tesla's full self-driving. Sandy Munro said it was crap and gave the reasons why. In particular, he said the only viable solution is FLIR, or forward-looking infrared, or forward-looking infrared radar, depending on what acronym you want to use. But anyway, he said that was the only solution. I want to give a point-counterpoint with my own thoughts about that topic. Let's take a look. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So first of all, I need to give massive respect to Sandy Munro. There are many areas that he is an expert in that I can't even touch. I learn a ton from watching his videos and of course watching E4 Electric, where he does interviews with Alex and they get into a whole bunch of topics. So anyway, huge respect. And I also want to be clear, I'm not at all angry about this. I actually enjoy thinking about these things and coming at stuff from different angles. What I want to give is sort of a counterpoint argument to what Sandy's giving. So watch E4 Electric's original video. I put a link to that in the description. I'm going to pull just a couple of very short clips out of it just so you get a flavor for how that argument goes. But it's 13 or 14 minute long video, and so you can watch that and get the entire thing from Sandy's point of view. And then I want to do some counterpoints from my point of view. So first thing, let's watch a couple of quick clips grabbed from this video.
My thoughts are really simple. All that stuff's crap. You know what? I've designed missiles and bombs. And they have to go through clouds, and they have to go through rainstorms and snowstorms, and they have to hit the target every time. Did I use radar, LADAR? Did I use geopositioning? Did I use cameras? None of that shit. All I used was FLIR, forward-looking infrared. That's what you need. The rest of the stuff is kids. It's stupid. You can see everything around you. That's the mode that I need in order to make ADAS work.
Of course, as you heard in there, Sandy did say that Tesla's full self-driving beta software is crap. So I'm not using that word. That's a word that he used. So I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that. That's actually his words. All right, so now let's get into it. I'm going to use my phone because I've got a couple of notes here just to make sure I keep my thoughts organized. So the first point is, how does FLIR work? Forward-looking infrared, right? It was developed by the military decades ago. It's actually been used for quite a while. It basically works passively, as far as I understand it. There's a lot of different FLIR companies out there. Sandy was particularly talking about Teledyne FLIR, which is Teledyne purchased FLIR. FLIR was its own company for a long time. And Sandy was indicating that this is an active system like radar, and some of the acronyms actually indicate that it does have radar involved. But whenever I looked up as many different takes on how this works as possible. And I think it's completely passive, just like a regular camera. So, a visible light camera, it takes information passively. It's not shooting out beams. So as opposed to radar or LiDAR that actually specifically shoot out beams of light at a specific wavelength, like in the microwave region or in the visible light region, and it takes that and it bounces it back. I believe that most, if not all, FLIR technology is passive like a normal visible light camera. Of course, what it does instead is it sees light in a longer wavelength. Remember, electromagnetic spectrum, what I'm calling light is everything from radio waves all the way up to X-rays and gamma rays and such like that, right? We see a tiny little sliver of that with visible light. Infrared is longer, ultraviolet is shorter wavelengths. So human beings see up to about 750 nanometers, and infrared light goes from about 750 to I think 11 or 1200 nanometers. So it gets longer wavelength light. And the important thing here is that longer wavelength light actually corresponds to heat. So in other words, what you're seeing is us radiating heat off of our bodies, right? So you're not bouncing light off right now. In order to see me in a visible light camera, we're taking lights, they're shining into my face, they're bouncing off and they're hitting the camera lens. Instead, what's going on with infrared is that my body, because I'm metabolizing things, I'm eating food, I'm burning that stuff, my body has a certain temperature, 37 degrees centigrade, in case you're wondering. That's the reason why you do the thermometer thing, stuff like that. Anyway, so that's giving off heat at that amount. And then of course, background things like the background of my room and stuff is substantially colder. So if you're looking at a thermal imaging thing, you can see me against the background because you see a cold background and you see me as much hotter. And then if there was like a candle next to me, that would be even hotter. So you'd be able to see different temperatures of things. And that's what FLIR is really good for, is infrared. It's seeing the heat. In other words, it can see in the dark, it can see through rain, it can see through snow, it can see through fog. It sees through all sorts of situations that normal humans and regular visible light cameras cannot see or can't see well. And FLIR camera technology is really good above about -30 degrees centigrade or somewhere around 240 Kelvin. So in other words, anything that's, unless it's just a really, really cold day in the north someplace, it's gonna see pretty much everything, right? So it will see -30 degrees centigrade all the way up to above what any of us are gonna be in, 40, 50 degrees, whatever, something like that. So it's really good at seeing that, and it can differentiate those buckets of heat, and it can see stuff. And then of course, what it does is reinterpret that for us human beings in terms of visible light. So that's point number one. It's just kind of the factual point. The only thing I take a little bit of issue with the video is that Sandy seemed to indicate that this was more of an active type of thing, like a radar, where it actually shoots out infrared. Again, maybe some of the technologies do, but of the ones that I looked at, I couldn't find that. Maybe that's an older technology that used to be that way, and now it's not anymore, but it seems to me like it's pretty much all passive. Point number two is how expensive it is. Sandy did indicate that this is a more expensive technology. Cameras are, I mean, almost no money, right? A couple of dollars per camera if you're buying them in bulk, the kind of stuff that Tesla's buying. When I looked it up, FLIR cameras for us consumers is somewhere on the order of $2,000. It's incredibly variable. It goes below that, it goes above that, it goes substantially above that if you want, but that's approximately right. So if you were fairly generous and you say Tesla's going to order millions of these things, they're going to get a bulk discount, and of course the cost is going to come down as you make more and more of these things. So you could say somewhere around $500 per unit would be pretty reasonable for a FLIR camera to add to the car. So if you're charging like $50,000 for a car, that's like 1% the cost of the car. So that is something that they could do. It is rather expensive, but it is, you know, definitely Tesla's making enough money that they could afford to install a FLIR camera if they wanted to. Point number three is engineering problems, okay? So the first thing is that FLIR does not see well through glass. Infrared is not transmitted well through glass. It's the reason why your car heats up and why greenhouses work, right? Light comes through at a visible wavelength, right? So something like 500 nanometers. It then bounces around, it black body re-radiates off of your furniture, off the chairs, off the dashboard, off the things like that. It re-radiates at a longer wavelength. That wavelength bounces around because glass is opaque to that. It's actually reflective to that. So it actually bounces back inside the car and the car warms up. So you can't really put a FLIR camera inside of a car. You can't put it inside the glass. If you notice when Sandy talks about that, if you watch the original video, he talks about when they leased it out to like police cars and things like that, they mounted it on top of these cars because you can't put these things inside the car. They just simply won't work. So that's an engineering problem because, you know, all of these things currently, like the front facing cameras, are inside the glass of the Tesla. Yeah, of course it's an engineering problem and you could fix it. You could create a little bubble on top or something like that and put it behind a piece of plastic that doesn't block it. So you could make that happen, but it is kind of an annoying problem about infrared, is that it doesn't deal well with glass. Of course, the second point is they're expensive. Obviously, you have something that costs a lot more. You can purchase all the cameras and probably the full self-driving hardware and such like for less than the $500 that it would cost to build in one of these things. Again, over time, that cost would come down. So if there are other benefits, it would still make sense to put that in because all of this stuff starts off expensive, but then Wright's Law drives that cost down. If you haven't seen my Wright's Law video, you should definitely watch that. But anyway, the cost of this thing would come down and eventually it would become very commoditized and wouldn't cost that much money with millions of these on the roads or wherever else. And the last big engineering problem is that they are very low resolution compared to visible light cameras. In other words, you might have 1920 by 1080, right? So you have 1080p resolution on a camera, whereas these guys are like a quarter or even less than that. So they're very, very low resolution. That may not matter all that much, and I'm gonna get into the reasons why it might not matter all that much, particularly that you're going to have to use vision along with this anyway, so it might not matter all that much that they're super low resolution, but they are lower resolution than visible light cameras. So you're paying more money for lower resolution. Lower resolution in general is not a good thing when you're driving because you want to be able to see the world in detail. Which brings us to point number 4, which is more fundamental /AI/machine learning problems. First of all, FLIR cannot be the only solution to driving. If you watch the full video, you see how Sandy's doing a bit of a political thing. Alex asks him, what about seeing a stop sign or something? And Sandy's like, it can see everything, it can see everything. Well, in a way, yes, it can, but in the sense of like LiDAR. So LiDAR can see a billboard, it can see a sign, it can see all of this other stuff, but it can't read it. All it can do is say like, there's an octagon shape, there's an octagonal shape. My hands can't make an octagonal shape, but you know what a stop sign looks like. It can say there is a thing that looks like that over there, but it has no idea if it actually has the word stop and if it's red on it. That requires visible light. Other signage, of course, telling you where things are, road markings, traffic lights, all of that kind of stuff. I guess you could cheat the traffic lights because you could see the heat of the different things, but then sometimes the traffic lights are sideways, so which way is the red and which way is the green? So again, it can't interpret all of this stuff, so you really have to have visible light cameras along with FLIR. So that is the fundamental problem with that, and what that means is that we get sensor fusion issues. If you watch this video up here, I've talked about this before, in particular with radar. This was part of AI Day. The problem with having multiple different types of input is it doesn't work well for computer vision and machine learning solutions. So let's just take radar and vision and the reason why Tesla is no longer using radar for their systems. What happens is radar has this kind of bucketed system. It basically says how fast is everything moving. So it's shooting light beams out at the microwave range, and right, so it shoots it out, it bounces back, it records the timing of this stuff and Doppler shifts and things like that, and it knows how far away things are and it knows how fast they're moving. The problem is that the world is full of things that aren't moving at all. They're static, and it's really bad at detecting that kind of thing. And the problem is then that you have a vision system that says, I think that there's a truck sticking halfway into the lane, parked, it pulled over on the emergency lane and it's halfway sticking out into my lane. The radar is going like, oh, there's this giant bucket of things that aren't moving. Don't worry about it. There's nothing there. The vision system's going like, hey, I think there's a problem. The radar system's going, nah, there's not a problem. We get closer and finally they coalesce, but that can create an emergency situation or a complete failure. Some of the early accidents with Tesla's full self-driving happened because the radar system, there was like a truck just completely across the road and the car absolutely failed to recognize it because the radar was saying absolutely nothing is there. It was assuming it was just the background world, right? It was like, it's just a piece of the background world. It's a bridge, it's a piece on the side, it's things like that. It's weird. It doesn't operate like human vision. And that's the fundamental thing you have to understand, is that computer vision is not like human vision. It's kind of a weird bucketed sort of system. It's not the way that we tend to visualize the world. Now, what Andrej Karpathy, Ashok, and everybody on the team at Tesla AI is doing is that they are working on a vision system that's much, much more like human vision. It tends to create a sparse vector object space in 3D versus a dense raster space. And I've done a video on that too if you want to check it out. But anyway, that vision system is much more like a human vision system and something that we can comprehend much better, but it's still not exactly the same. So anyway, the sensor fusion thing is a really, really, really fundamental problem that you don't want to deal with if you don't have to. It doesn't matter if you're doing LiDAR and vision, it doesn't matter if you're doing radar and vision, it doesn't matter if you're doing FLIR and vision, it doesn't matter what it is. As long as you have two input sources that can disagree with each other, you've got problems because you've got something where the voting system may not work properly and it may not know what action to take because it's getting two different inputs. So those are the points and counterpoints I wanted to bring up. My conclusions are, yes, absolutely, FLIR can be a valuable asset, but cars are not the military. And what I mean by that is cars don't have to work in every single circumstance in the world always. So cars don't have to work in an absolute snowstorm. They don't have to work under military war conditions. They don't have to work in a dust storm. They don't have to work in a really heavy rain. They don't have to work in super heavy fog. You can just pull over. The car can just go like, can't do it right now, right? So pretty much any situation where a human driver would feel super uncomfortable driving in, the car can just do that too. The autonomous car does not have to be like the military, right? The military has to to operate under completely adverse situations where it really makes no difference how bad conditions are. You have to keep going forward with your mission. The car does not have to do that. So it does not, even level 5 autonomy does not require that the car drive under every single possible circumstance. It only requires that it drive under circumstances where human beings can drive. So that's number one. Number two is that with this photon mapping that Elon Musk and Andrej Karpathy have touted, these cameras can actually see a whole lot better than people think, including in the near infrared, as all CMOS type cameras have that capability, and actually CCD ones do too as well. Now, admittedly, they are inside the glass, so that's going to block a lot of that infrared light, but they have that capability, so if they wanted to, they could use an engineering solution. You know, punching a hole in the glass is kind of excessive, but they could do something where they could change the glass like right in that area. They could do something like that if they really, really wanted to get the infrared. They could actually get it out of the current cameras if they really wanted to, because those cameras automatically have that capability. In general, the reason why you don't see infrared on the camera that's facing me is, number one, they have a filter inside the camera, and number two, they have software that adjusts it to make it look better and more pleasing to the human eye. But the cameras do actually deal with near infrared quite well. So Tesla could definitely pull that information out if they want. What they're saying, however, is with photon information, they're directly counting photons. They're not processing it to look good to human beings. They're actually taking the raw photon count, and they can see things incredibly dark and very nebulous to us human viewers. It's pretty impressive. Like if I'm driving down the street, I will see sometimes that the car is visualizing like a person or something like that far before I can really see them as I'm driving down the street. And that is really, really cool, especially at night in my neighborhood when people tend to walk their dogs at night. And, you know, some people forget to wear a reflectorized jacket or a flashing light on their head or something like that. So it's really, really cool that the car can see that well. So it's already seeing substantially better than human beings do under these conditions. So again, that negates the necessity to have FLIR because it's already doing really, really well. And again, it doesn't have to operate with no headlights on in a military type situation in any kind of weather conditions. It only has to operate under conditions that normal human drivers can drive in. Now, could this be a really effective thing for special circumstances like military vehicles, or perhaps long-haul truckers or something, things like that, who have to drive in Canada or really, really potentially bad conditions? Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that a specialized company could work on, right? There could be a company that works on a solution just for this to try to put in place this type of solution for specialized circumstances. But for general purpose driving, it's really not necessary to have FLIR. I've looked into this. I've thought both ways about it a lot because I've been like, wow, FLIR would be really great. And when you think about it, you're like, yeah, it'd be really cool. Like if you're driving along and you had a little side camera inside your car that had FLIR so you could see out there and see what was going on, it'd be awesome. But even with a human being, you could have a sensor fusion issue, right? You could be looking forward, not seeing anything, seeing some stuff in the FLIR, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on, right? So you could be having a human sensor fusion issue if you had both of these types of input going on without a lot of training. So it's not a question of whether FLIR is actually really cool and really useful under very particular circumstances. It's whether that usefulness supersedes the fundamental problems that are going to crop up when you include it. And again, it doesn't really matter whether it's FLIR or radar or LiDAR. The sensor fusion issue is the fundamental problem that you really, really want to avoid. And that's exactly what Tesla AI, after years of trying other solutions, has come to that conclusion that they don't really want multiple sources of input. What they want is a single input that can do almost everything, at least as well as a human being can do. And they've already proven that this is the case. I mean, just in my everyday driving, the car just drives itself around and I don't have to worry about it. And again, if there was a super heavy rainstorm or something like that, or fog or a heavy snowstorm, yeah, the car probably would not be able to drive very effectively under those circumstances. But again, it doesn't have to. This is not a military vehicle. This is a consumer level vehicle. If it can't drive, it can just drive, you know, it can pull over to the side of the road and go, can't do it. If you want to take over, give it a shot and have fun. So again, with all due respect to Sandy, I really think that under the circumstances of consumer driving at least, and maybe regular commercial driving, that FLIR is not necessary and that the problems it causes are significant, and it's not worth trying to figure out how to make them work together because it doesn't give you enough of an advantage. I say let's see what Tesla does in the next 12 months. It seems like Elon Musk et al. Are super excited about the possibilities of Tesla full self-driving beta over the next year, and I am as well. So I say give them another 12 months and let's see. And if they completely fail, then we can actually start looking at other solutions. But in the meantime, I think that Tesla deserves a shot at this. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode, found it fun and thought-provoking. If you did enjoy the video, please do like it so other people can find it, because that's how YouTube's AI works. And also consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the support. Especially, I'm going to Austin right now, so it is going to cost some money to go there. That's all thank you to my Patreon patrons for supporting that trip. I am hoping to get a ticket to the GigaFest. Otherwise, I'll just be nearby the grounds and having fun talking to people who are around the Austin GigaFest. But anyway, I'll be there from the 6th through the 9th, so look me up if you're in the area as well. And of course, if you want to join the Patreon team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.